Hey Martina, welcome to my Future-Proof podcast today.
Thank you, Carsten.
Today we're going to talk about payments and the different types of payments, which are?
We look into 3D Secure in card rails, into instant payments, account-to-account, and as well in Apple Pay, how this interferes.
Wow, quite a zoo of payments. Looking forward to that discussion with you. Tune in for Future-Proof. Welcome to the Future-Proof podcast, the podcast series in which we explore the future of banking and payment. My name is Carsten Wengel, and today I have the great honor to welcome Martina Forster here in my studio. Welcome, Martina.
Thank you, Carsten. Thanks for having me.
Martina, you are the portfolio owner of secure digital payments at G+D Netcetera. And in this capacity, you've overlooked the development of secure payments in the industry over the last 8, almost 10 years. But you're also exploring the future, right? How from card rails we are now going to instant payment, account to account. These are areas which we are like to explore with you today. But also what is the value of instant payment, for example? And how big tech, so Apple and Google, are changing the payment world. I'm looking forward to that discussion.
Thank you. Yes, me too. There is a lot ongoing.
Excellent. So, but before we go into the future, let's look a little bit back. So I said you are over 8 years, I think, at G+D Netcetera. And I'm wondering, was there a defining moment for you or something that sparked you why you find payment so exciting?
I guess it is actually this challenge of balancing security and user experience. So making the consumer happy, making the merchant happy that the checkouts are going to succeed, while keeping a security at a very high level in order to prevent fraud. This is just an ongoing challenge, and I like challenges. So that's part of why I'm here. Yes.
And you specifically worked a lot on the topic of 3D Secure, which is, the basic defining way of making secure payments in the card rail area, right? Now, this security has been evolving over time, also due to regulatory aspects. But if we look into new types of payment, are we sure that we get the same security there?
Yeah, that's a good question. The 3D Security took years to develop to the standard that it is today. So today it's a global standard, very well established and accepted by all players of the payment ecosystem. So imagine the bank behind the consumer, but as well the merchant side, the shop where you are going to have the online payment being done, as well as the card networks that are supporting that international standard. And all of them need to play together in order to make it happen smoothly for the consumer. And I believe the alternative payments can now very much benefit from the learnings that have been done already in 3D Secure. But still also there is a lot of difference. There is things going to be different, like the governance of that ecosystem looks very different.
And you said there's a lot of learnings in 3DS. And I know there's a lot of regulatory body involved. Of course, also the schemes are involved in the system. So it's really an orchestra, you could say, of different players, plus the banks, and in the end, the merchants and the consumer. Were there one or two specific learnings or things that came out in this development of 3D Secure?
I believe so. So of course, there was like the first 3DS version, which was ages back. Actually, I was not even yet in payments, which had a lot of hiccups. There was like the consumer was transferred from one website to another website between frames, and there was a lot of friction. So it was not really well accepted. And afterwards, there was a second version of 3D Secure, EMV 3DS, being established. And that one saw a big opportunity out of the regulation in Europe, which was asking for a better consumer protection during payments, which is why we have these strong customer authentications happening in all the online payments, or most of the online payments. And 3D Secure saw a big chance in that time that actually the EMV 3DS new version came out to the market exactly at that point when PSD2 in Europe, this regulation, came into play. So that is maybe one learning to take away. It takes some top-down regulation to advance such a payment standard. But as well, it takes that everybody is willing to collaborate and to improve the experience across the whole customer journey in order to make it successful.
And I'm curious, would you even say that regulation here is even a driver of innovation in this ecosystem?
I definitely would say so. I mean, regulation is not always nice to have. Definitely not. It can also be hindering what we know. But I believe in Europe, it is actually helping a lot because of the heterogeneous place. So we have geographies and countries which are very different in terms of legacy system in place that they have, the payment infrastructure that they have. And it is needed actually to align on a bigger level, on an umbrella level, like from a European regulator, that advances can be done, similar to the US. US is not needing the same level of regulation potentially because it's a much bigger market.
And here I'm curious also because regulation, of course, is focusing on security of the payment transaction itself. But how to balance this with usability? Right? You mentioned the frames and how complex it was in the past, but that was also something to explore further, no?
Indeed. I mean, usability was improved because the private market was definitely looking into ways how to improve the conversion. So, of course, in the end, you want to have the payment being done, the purchase being done successfully. And there were tools being added like risk scoring engines. So now we have transaction risk scoring for every online payment. And that could only evolve out of the pain, basically. So because there was a pain, so much friction with this step up happening for each checkout. So imagine when you were shopping, you shop, let's take a ticket, a flight ticket, and you were asked to authenticate yourself with your banking app. And while some of the consumers appreciate this type of entrusted experience because they know, my bank is involved and I have trust, for other use cases, you don't want to have this added friction and you would like to have some type of security in the back, like a fraud prevention risk engine or something.
Especially also for small payments, I can imagine,
Exactly.
right? If you pay €5 or Swiss francs for an ice cream, right? You don't want a lot of friction in this, right? For your ticket to travel to South Africa, maybe yes.
Yeah. So that's when low-value payments were introduced as an exception in Europe, that they can be treated differently. So below a certain amount that you are doing a purchase, you won't see the same step-up experience as a consumer.
Right. So look, 3DS has been, from what I understand, very successful in fraud prevention, right? Now, the settlement takes place usually over a day. Now we are moving to instant payment, where settlement takes place in less than 10 seconds. Can we assume that the same level of security can be granted then? I'm curious.
Well, I believe technology will help there, yes, because technology never stands still. So there is a lot of evolution ongoing. And in the instant payment, there is a nice concept being established in different markets, especially in those geographies which are already a bit advanced and they have had a lot of fraud out of instant payment because the money is really moved in 10 seconds from one account to another and it's gone. No chance to get it back. So there, the industry came up with a new concept called account verification or verification of payee, where you want to double check the recipient of where the money is flowing to. So now it's not only about securing that the legitimate account holder of the money is going to make the payment, but actually you also are double checking the recipient if it is an appropriate account holder. So the bank account number, IBAN number, and the account name are going to be checked versus what is known to the bank before doing the payment transaction. And because this happens before the instant payment, so it is also the layer ahead of the actual instant payment transaction. You can still do that and without interfering then the instant settlement process.
Right. However, I still want to challenge you on this one once more because I read some statistics that, for example, in countries who went to instant quite early, like Australia, for example, had a lot of trouble with fraud. And I wonder, is that something that is now much better under control compared to the typical cardway 3DS type of fraud management? Or are we still on a steep learning curve here?
Yes, we are. Yes. No, it is not yet found the one recipe to prevent fraud, also because the fraudulent patterns are going to evolve very quickly. Once you have protected one area of the payments ecosystem, the fraudster is simply going to find the next weak entry point to go after the money. So there is never the one simple single recipe. And I believe also verification of payee has not shown yet that the fraud is fully reduced in the UK, for example, but it is rather with the added services such as risk scoring, transaction risk scoring, as well as, again, the anti-money laundering work that is done by the banks. There is different approaches where banks are sharing information about fraud patterns. So they have either decentral approaches, like in the UK, where they exchange data about fraud in a secure manner so that they can better understand the pattern and then prevent further frauds being happening. Or there is systems like in Australia or in Spain where it's more centralized. So one central institute is having all the data and insights about fraud and also helps with added information. So like additional insights to the banks before they execute the transaction actually in instant. Yes.
Interesting. Now, but instant, from what I understand, is the next big thing, right? We see it here in Switzerland. You mentioned UK, Australia. And also in Europe, right? We have SEPA Instant coming up. And it's all about exchange of value between the constituents, merchant, consumer, and of course the bank is always involved. But who really benefits here from this new service that it gets so much quicker, right? Who benefits?
It is not so obvious that the consumers are the first ones to benefit. Of course, there is some use cases where the consumer is really going to be happy to have the money settled immediately. Imagine emergency situations, immediate credit in the case of emergencies. Also, different payout cases where it out of the insurance industry possibly. So those can be consumer-related and use cases as well as peer-to-peer, of course, but that's what we have known before. And for the consumer, it might not make a difference whether the money is indeed settled within 10 seconds or whether they just have a confirmation that it is actually going to happen. It does make possibly a big difference. For the SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises, it is making a difference as they will have the chance to increase the rate of how quick the cash is coming back once they have had the service being provided. So the cash flow in the supply chain is seen as a big advantage. And out of, then again, the SMEs, which have new advantage out of cash management, we expect that there is new business models going to evolve. And as well, then the banks can have a benefit out of these new businesses, which will need, again, financing, right? So it's not so direct that the consumer would be the first one as a main beneficiary, but I rather believe it is a whole ecosystem because you enable a whole ecosystem, a whole geography or market to have a more quick exchange of money, of cash in the end, which enables really new business models as well.
Right. So I understand there are obvious advantages for instant payment. And, in payments over the last century even, we could say there was always the prediction one thing new comes and the others disappears, which never happened. So will 3DS and card rails disappear?
No. No. I mean, there is a lot of advantages for the cards as well. And they will not simply disappear. The cross-border capability that you're able, as a consumer, you can travel anywhere and you will find a point of sale which is supporting your payment card. So be it MasterCard, Visa, Amex, so it can be any brand, right? And that is not going to disappear so quickly. There is a big legacy yet in place and it's also functioning very well. So why should it go?
Yeah, exactly. And another question I have on instant then, Martina, is you mentioned the obvious benefits for merchants, small and medium enterprises, because they get the cash earlier, right? Which is always a benefit for small enterprises. Is there any example you would say of an enterprise that has also changed even its business model based on instant, for example?
Mm-hmm. I believe as a general example, we can look into subscription type of businesses. Because when you have the cash in, you can simply release the subscription or the good immediately when you're paid, right? Instead of the consumer doesn't need to wait any longer for receiving the good. So that's one case. And those are where maybe we should add something I didn't mention before. The risk for the merchants or for the SMEs are actually being lowered, that they would have outstanding payments not being done or not maybe even never ending up on them because they have been paid by credit. So that's obvious on the SMEs. Really, there is a big benefit.
Good for the SMEs. Excellent. Yes. Let's go from the small and medium enterprise now to big tech. So we all use and deploy Apple or Google tools in our daily life. I think that's a general statement we can make. And especially Apple, I think, was very much reinventing the interface of the user with technology, right? I mean, the usability and the customer journeys with Apple devices is outstanding for many reasons. Now, they have also entered the space of payment. And that I find interesting because it feels like they are making the role of the bank almost invisible. They're pushed sort of to the back. There's almost a disintermediation. Is that something you would observe too, Martina? And is that maybe even a concern for banks?
Fair question. I mean, the banks should be concerned, I think, about the touch point, about the interface with the consumer. They can connect their state-of-the-art user experience that they have, Apple really setting the standard. They can connect now with account-to-account payment rails directly with the banks, and they would not need to have any card payment being added behind. So the funding of a payment can be directly from my own bank account. If I'm as a consumer, have my bank account, I allow the bank account to be connected to Apple Pay. The transactions can actually go directly funded from the bank to Apple Pay. And the bank is not really being involved in the touch point anymore. Simply funding, right?
So do you believe that merchants and banks will react on the opening of NFC, and will we now see merchant wallets and bank wallets instead of Apple and Google wallets?
Yes, I do. I mean, they don't want to just give up, right, on the competitive fight against the big ones, the big techs. And this is actually a chance where technology is available, and the banks can actually now bring back again their brand to the point of sale during a checkout process with the technologies that are being implemented in the current banking app or in a banking wallet and in the future, or a retail wallet. Imagine your retail store that is going to be a wallet as well. Yes. They can as well provide the payment functionality.
Yes. So banks and merchants fight back. Could be.
I would say so. I would do so.
Yeah. I'm just wondering then, if I look at it from my side, myself, Carsten Wengel, using also banking apps and payment technologies, it's becoming more and more zoo, I feel, right? Don't you think? So we have the card rates, we have the P2P, we have the account to account, you have different wallets, right? Does it not get too crowded in this space, and will there maybe one prevailing in the end, one area of payment?
It is crowded, and I believe those that have the biggest chance to survive on the long term are the ones that gain the trust of the consumer. And then again, I believe personally that in some markets, the banks, yes, they have out of a tradition, they still have a very strong standing in the society. Not everywhere, but so that's one aspect of it. And banks have a huge chance actually to keep that standing and defend the reputation as a trusted payment provider in the back. And I personally also, I wouldn't trust everyone asking now basically to send money to somewhere just without having an interference of my bank, or of my known card brand. So I still would probably go for the ones which I trust that they can really handle payments in a sensitive manner.
Would you dare a prediction how payment will look like in 10 years?
That's a glass ball.
Yes.
Well, I believe it is still going to be very heterogeneous. So geographically and each segment will have its different right to exist. So the payment solutions have a right to exist for different segments. What I could imagine that identity solutions are actually seeing a much more powerful place. So it's going to be much more present in everyone's mind that the identity in the end, my digital identity as Martina in the digital world, will be probably a more core function, and the payment is maybe rather an add-on to it, because the identity is going to be the real credential that I will need to protect and that I will want to provide in order to make a payment happening.
That's an interesting thought, and would align with all the digital developments we also see in currencies, right? We are looking also in digital currencies now. The ECB, for example, is looking into this.
Digital
but
euro,
the
yes.
identity potentially could be the anchor for everything.
Yes.
Interesting. Martina, thank you. That's very exciting a thought towards the future of payment. One question I have for you, actually, Martina. I know you a little bit now from G+D Netcetera, and we collaborate there. And I always wonder, when I look into all of our talents, what makes the talents tick? What makes you tick? What motivates you, Martina, to go to work every day and dive into the vast topic of payments? Anything special?
Simple answer: challenges are making me tick. And specifically now in payments, there is so much to learn, so much to uncover or discover and explore together, because there is quite some chaos as well. So that's the chaos, that makes me tick, because I would like to help to gain out of the chaos the advantages for the consumers, for our customers.
Hey, Martina, that was superb. Thank you so much for explaining and exploring the field of payments with me today in this podcast. Really appreciate it.
Thank you as well. It was a great pleasure.
Thank you. And if you like this podcast, like and subscribe it. And can't wait to have you again on Future Proof Podcast. Take care. All the best. Hey, Martina.
Hi, Carsten.
So good
How
to
are you
see
today?
you. You look great.
Same, likewise.
Shall we talk about payments?
Yes, definitely. Let's
Okay, let's record a podcast.
do this.